Hello, I'm Sean from Booksource, the company that created Booksource Classroom. I'll be your guide through a series of videos to help you better understand Booksource Classroom and its many features. And today, I'm really excited because we're going to talk about LibraryLens. I'm going to give you just an overview of LibraryLens and what it does. So if you're on your dashboard after logging in, you've probably noticed that there's this area here that says Analyze with LibraryLens, and it says Achievements, Suggestions, and Issues, and it has some reports here that you can run. Well, this is a very, very powerful tool, and I'm excited to get into it. So on the left-hand side here, under Tools, you'll see LibraryLens. If you're on the mobile app or another mobile device using the website, you can also go to the main menu and you can find LibraryLens there as well. So let's click on LibraryLens. Now the first thing you'll notice is that bar that loads, and what that is doing is showing you how many of your books are Booksource Verified. Now, we have an entire video dedicated to talking about what Booksource Verified is and how we go about the verification process. So please refer to that if you want a deeper understanding about how that works. But right now I'm just going to briefly go over it. Basically, we have literacy experts here at Booksource, and their department is called the Collection Development Department. These are people that have masters in library science, for instance, or things like that. And so they're the ones that actually create various tags that are unique to Booksource, and they assign them to books. That's not the only thing they do, though. They also vet books. A lot of times they read through the entire book. They make sure they know what content is in the book, if it has any offensive content, for example, and will tag it appropriately. So a lot of what your staff has to do in vetting which books you add to your classroom, or what you have to do, we already do for you. And so if you buy your books from Booksource, they're already guaranteed to be Booksource Verified. Now, LibraryLens only looks at Booksource Verified books. You can tell that they're Booksource Verified, by the way, by looking for this little Booksource icon in your library or anywhere else in the application. So if you log on to the website and you go to LibraryLens and it says, say, only 60% are verified or 90%, all that means is that that other 40% we're not looking at whenever we're making these analyses on these books. And the reason is the analysis has to do with those tags that we already applied to the books. So if it's a book we don't know about, we have no way of knowing what tags should be applied to it. We want to make sure that we give you the most accurate recommendations and the most accurate analysis. So that's why we only look at Booksource Verified titles. Now, if you buy all of your books from Booksource, then of course everything's going to be automatically verified and you'll have 100%, just like I do here in this library. So let's talk a little bit about LibraryLens, and you'll notice on the left-hand side here it says Overview. That's what we're on right now, is the Overview page. You will get all these achievements, and that's what you're already doing right in your classroom. You'll get suggestions, and those are things that, well, they're not going to make or break your library, but if you're looking to improve your library or add some books, here's some areas where you can add some things. So you can see here, for example, physical disabilities. I only have 4 books featuring physical disabilities, and based on the size of my library, we think that we should have one more book in there to make it 5. You also have issues, and these are things that need immediate attention, and that's an example of I don't have a good blend of fiction nonfiction. We want you to be as close to 50% as possible, and only 23% of my books are nonfiction. So that's pretty bad, and that's something that I need to address right away. Now you might be asking yourself, who's making these decisions on what rules there are of how many books are added to a library or not for various things? Well, that's our Collection Development Department, and as I mentioned earlier, they are literacy experts. They've been in the field for many, many, many years, and ultimately, we run the same analyses on our classroom libraries that we sell, and ultimately how Booksource Classroom's LibraryLens was formed was we decided, hey, what if we provided that same analysis and those same tools to educators and let them run it on their libraries? So you're getting the same treatment that we apply to our very own collections and our classroom library collections whenever you run these analytics on your library. And it runs the same way that we do as well, and you can tell over here on the left, I'll kind of run through what that is. The first thing we look at is size. So that is, do you have enough books in your library? There is a minimum size to a library, and there is some fact to that and some scientific studies that are based around that. And we do factor in those studies whenever we decide what rulings we're going to make as far as how many books you should have of certain subjects and whatnot. But you need to have a minimum size, and we can tell you if you need to add more books or not. Then fiction, nonfiction split. Do you have a good split? Again, we want to see 50-50, and we want to see as close to 50% of each one as possible. reading level, and this is important, and I'll show you in a minute. You need to have enough books that are below level for struggling readers. You need enough books that are on level for the everyday reader, and then you need enough that are above level for the striving readers. So you need to have a good bell curve of reading levels going on. Diversity, which is a big topic right now, of course, is your library inclusive and diverse? And we have a whole range of ways of telling you that in LibraryLens. Freshness is going to say, are your books new? Or at least are some of them new? Especially with nonfiction books, you want to make sure that you're always introducing new books into your library. Not only does it help keep the subject matter up to date, but it helps keep the interest of the students as well. And lastly, there's categories. Do you have a good blend of categories? And these are major categories like history, science, social studies, things like that. So we'll also look at that. And this is the order of importance that we apply to our classroom library collections that we sell at Booksource. And so that's the same sort of rubric we're going to use in deciding various analytics about your classroom library. So as I mentioned, there are these achievements, there are suggestions, there are issues. Now, you can click on any of these. I can go ahead and I can say, okay, this physical disabilities, I need to add another book. Well, I have books here that are recommended for my classroom, so let me go ahead and click on that. Okay, and that's going to take me to that particular issue. Consider adding books about or featuring physical disabilities. We also tell you why you should shop at Booksource, and if you want to know more about that, go to booksource.com and check it out. But it's also going to show all these books that you could add to your library that you don't already have, and these are truly chosen for you based on what you have. So we try to get you what I would call the best bang for the buck, and that is we're going to try to get you a book that meets many different needs. So yeah, you need some books that meet physical disabilities, but that's not the only subject that we want to find. We don't want to just find books that meet that. So you'll notice this first book, this has African American authors, it has heritage and culture, it has African American illustrators, and it has disabled and disabilities. It also has history, and it has another category as well. So this is on level with my library, which is a level or a grade level of 3. And so I can go ahead and add this to a wish list, or I can add it to a cart. And you can see it was added to my wish list, and if I click up here, I would actually be able to see that wish list. And you can also click up here and see your cart. You can also add everything to a cart if you want to, or add everything to a wish list. Why would you want to do that? Well, if you're just providing a list of books that you need for your library and the administrators are the ones that are going to choose which ones, go ahead and just save everything. You can always go up here to that wish list or that cart, and you can print off the entire thing. You can also convert it to a quote to send to Booksource experts, and we will convert that over for you into a quote. You can do all sorts of things once you get this list. You can also print this list. So if you were to print this, it would show all these books here, but in a more print-friendly format, and you could also provide that to somebody. Last but not least, at the bottom here, if you're not finding the right books, you may not know this, but we have literacy account managers that you can call on the phone or you can email, and this is an actual team that is at Booksource. These are literacy experts that will help you determine exactly the right books for you. And the level of customization we can do on book recommendations and book collections is astounding. I'm telling you, just about anything you would ever need in any way that you want it categorized or set up or grouped, they can take care of it. These guys are great. So if LibraryLens can't get you there, they certainly can. So this is how you can get recommendations for what to add to your library after you've identified a gap. Now let me just briefly run you through what the other pages look like. So on size, this one's pretty simple. Do you have enough books in your library? Yep. The size of my library is ideal. Now you can click on achievements as well in case you are looking to improve things. And again, these are just going to be books that are a good match for my library, and there are probably some sections that I need to improve anyway, and so we're going to try to get you that best bang for the buck. You'll notice it's green up here, and that's because that's an achievement. So let me go back to size. So on every single one of these pages, it's going to have a data and analytics tab, and if you click that, it's going to show you some interesting charts and graphs. I'm not going to show you the size chart and graph because it's pretty simple, so let's go to fiction, nonfiction instead. Okay, so, I have an issue. I need to add more nonfiction titles, so let me click on this first and see what it has to suggest. Okay, let's see. Here are a bunch of nonfiction titles that I should add, and again, these are different categories that I need to add anyway. There's that disabled and disabilities book. I need to add books in that category anyway. So we're going to try to match those up to you. Let me go back to fiction, nonfiction, and I'm going to go to that data and analytics tab. So you see here that I can visualize my nonfiction books, books that don't have anything applied to them, because sometimes some books do not, and the fiction books. It also gives you a list here as a count. Now let me go to reading level. Let's check that one out. Okay, I need more on-level books. Again, I could click this and it would actually tell me which books would be a good fit for my library, but I'm going to go to data analytics. Okay, so here you can see these really interesting bar graphs here, and this is going to show what my library levels out to as far as these levels go. Well, this is actually not that great, because if I'm a third grade classroom, I would rather see my book level starting right about here and then peaking at on level and then going back down and ending right at the top of above level. I've got way too many books that are out of range. Now if I use Lexile, it looks better. Now, why are these different? Because not all books have Lexile. Not all books have guided reading levels. Not all books have AR levels. Some have all three and some have none at all. So it can totally change what your library looks like depending on the leveling system that you abide by. Now, if you want to know more about leveling, we have some interesting articles about that at booksource.com, or you can also contact one of our LAMs and we'll be happy to explain it. Usually Lexile is used at a higher grade level and guided reading would be used at a lesser level. AR, of course, is used by people that tend to use the AR system for encouraging students to read. So you can also use AR here. Now let me go to diversity. This is where it gets really interesting. And we have another video, by the way, that's entirely about reading level chart, and it's also entirely about diversity chart and about the freshness chart. So be sure to check those out. But briefly, you're going to see here all the achievements. These are things that I've done really well in my library and all those suggestions. Now, if any of these suggestions or issues are things that you don't necessarily care about in your library, just ignore them. There's no real reason you have to actually click these and do something with the information. We're just providing it to you. So click on Data and Analytics here, and I'm going to get my diversity audit. Number one, we give you a nice visual way of displaying exactly which titles are in your library, and if you're a visual person, this is going to help you understand exactly where your library is and how it breaks down as far as the diversity goes. You can see I can just kind of click through here. Now this is also a very powerful table that's going to show all of the diversity categories we have, and it's going to show you how your library stacks up. So let me collapse these first, and then I'll just show you the major groups. So I can see here that I'm not doing great with Native American, actually. I have a really low percentage, only 1%. People who identify as LGBTQ+, that one is even worse. Let me go ahead and expand this Native American section, and I will see, okay, I need more books about Native American protagonists, or featuring Native American protagonists and Native American illustrators. I've only got 2 of each of those. I can click on the suggestion and I can go over and get those recommendations. Now freshness, same thing. I have a great job of having fresh books in my library because 33% of my titles are fresh or new. But I can also go to this chart and see how it all breaks down. Now, what is considered a new title? As it says up here, it's those with a copyright date that is 5 years or newer. So you can see that these are the books that are less than 5 years old. I've got 267 of them. It's pretty good. And so there's always a need for those classics in your library. Don't just remove things because they're old. But you also need to constantly be adding new things in and churning new books in and out of your library. There are ways that you can go into the library page and find out which books are being read the most and which ones are not. And the ones that aren't, maybe you go ahead and set those aside for a little while and put in some new books. And then over time, you can introduce those older books back in. It's just a good way of keeping your library fresh. Now, if I go to categories, it's going to be the same thing, except for this one does not have an analytics tab. That's the only page that doesn't. But you can see here, I need more books about math. I need to have 10% of my library about math. Now, that doesn't mean that it's a book that's just teaching you math. It could be a book that, and most of the time, it's a book that has kind of incidental math involved. And these are things that are important to have in your library. We think that that's a very important issue. So if I click on that, again, I can get my recommendations here. Okay, so Amazing Animals Narwhals Edition. This involves math in this book. Same thing here, I can go to Scalar Buildings and Structures. Unofficial Guide to Using Math in Minecraft. I'm sure you have some students that are into Minecraft. Hockey, Stats, Facts, and Figures. That's a great book as well for various math-related subjects. So Booksource, the LibraryLens feature in Booksource Classroom, it's really powerful and it's well made so that you can find the gaps in your library and then actually fill those gaps. Now, you might be saying to yourself, it's going to be really hard clicking through all this and adding the right books and everything. And what I would have to say to you is scroll down the page and talk to these guys. If you contact our literacy account managers, they can run these same reports and they will actually find all the right books for you within your budget so that you're not diluting certain areas whenever you add too many books of another area. They will make sure that they get you the right books, so I would recommend you contact them. So thank you for learning about LibraryLens. Check out the other book or the other videos that we have about LibraryLens, and thanks for taking the time to learn about Booksource Classroom in general. Be sure to check out the other helpful videos that we have in this channel, not just the LibraryLens videos, but all the other ones that we have as well.